Test, test, test.
Is this yours or mine? That's yours. Oh,
Test.
yeah, I guess we'd be careful. Spice up the show, though. I will check. Don't see it yet.
All right, you guys ready?
I guess.
Okay, when the lights come up, you can ask me if I'm surprised.
Check 1, 2.
And remember, this is a fairly. Oh shit.
We doing an hour?
This is a fairly lengthy show. We don't have to do more. We'll do a. Oh man, what happened? Just lost it. Hold on a second. I want to start with that.
Did you even see it?
I did
haven't
see
seen
it, but I
it
just
yet.
didn't think of much of it.
Who was it between?
Oh my god. No, I retweeted it. You might be actually you could one that can feign outrage.
Yes.
You're the Blackhawk man.
I know KFAN just put it on their show page.
Plus, I'm not sure that.
We're live.
I'm going to interrupt the conversation between Michael Russo and Lavelle E. Neal III now to introduce Sports from Hell. This is our sports roundtable at Hell's Kitchen, downtown Minneapolis. Michael Russo, Star Tribune hockey writer. Lavelle E. Neal III. I'm sorry. I know how you feel when I leave one of the initials or the Esquire out of your whole name.
You're not the first.
Our Star Tribune baseball writer. I'm Jim Suhan. We do a lot of shows here at Hell's Kitchen. 9th and Nicolette, place for comfortable shoes and comfort food. $3 Minnesota taps during happy hour. Great weekend brunches. Mimosa bar, Bloody Mary bar. You can build your own meal. You do not want to. And if you're ever here with Lavelle, go through the Bloody Mary room before Lavelle. That's a life hack for you right there. And we are, as we're watching, this is kind of a loose interactive show here. Lavelle Neal III from Chicago, Blackhawks fan, is watching a video of the Minnesota Wild mascot beating up the Blackhawks mascot with a bat. This is Al Capone style violence. I was going to ask, is this just fake outrage that people are upset about this? And then I see you saying, what the hell? So obviously it's real outrage.
Well, my thing is this. He can get away with this in January. If it's June, it's not going to happen. So just go ahead and get your licks in now. Like Sunday, the Wild will probably win on Sunday in Chicago.
Apparently, this is actually, I was watching that when it happened last night. I thought nothing of it. Because
You know
I
what's
see-
so funny? Yeah, it became this huge.
It became a
controversy.
thing.
Yeah. Apparently, the Wild are gonna. I can't wait to see how. Like if they're going to actually put out this statement on like toilet paper or what, but the Wild apparently are being forced to put out a statement apologizing for this today.
Who's asking?
Well, the
for a
Chicago
statement?
Tribune wrote a big column basically bashing it. Like, what do you tell your kids? You know,
You're kidding.
Don't grow up to be a mascot.
And,
That's what
and
you tell
poor
your kids.
Chris Cook, who I know and I'm friends with, who wrote this column, who was legitimately upset with it, is just getting annihilated on Twitter.
So
I mean, like,
I know Chris Cook. So he's upset about this.
Yeah, he's the one that wrote the column.
Oh my.
And I will say I did not see it because
I saw it.
during when was it, first or second intermission?
I can't remember.
Because,
I'm old. I can't
during the
remember when stuff
intermission, when
happens.
was it? Second intermission, Luke Cahill says. So the intermissions are when I'm writing, especially after that second period yesterday,
Yes.
when you're just trying to cram as much stuff into your machine as you possibly can, and Nordy really beat the crap out of the guy.
When mascots are involved, we should be able to laugh at ourselves a little bit more than to be outraged over violence. I mean, come on. What's wrong with some comedy and some slapstick in sports?
I just
Tom
think
and
with
Jerry type stuff.
everything that's
Yeah.
happening in America today, this is the issue we should be talking about. That's how I feel.
I'm mostly offended by mascots as it is. So
See, that's
maybe
my
this-
point.
This will get rid of.
I'm not offended by mascot on mascot violence. I'm offended by mascots. And you know what? I'm offended by the stupidity of the stunts because they do this at Timberwolves games too all the time. They'll have a fake mascot from the other team and they'll have them falling down or getting beat up. Who does that work on?
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting about mascots, and I don't know how it works with Nordy or the Blackhawk mascot there, but and I could be completely wrong on this, but I remember once we were in Atlanta or Tampa or something, and Stanley C. Panther, the Panther mascot, was there, and he, by that, the home mascot also got the crap beat out of him. And I was a little stunned that the Panthers would allow their mascot to go there. And what I was told, at least with Stanley C, is that like he kind of owned the right. This mascot owned the rights
Kinda
to
like San
Stanley
Diego
C.
Chicken.
So he was allowed to accept any engagement that he possibly could, and would travel around the country and things like that, and be Stanley C. And sometimes he'd show up in Chicago and and be kind of the butt of the jokes and things like that. And we were actually, I'm pretty positive that Nordy once was in Vancouver and the same type of thing happened. So I don't know how it works with the Chicago mascot, but you got to think the Blackhawks were aware that he was coming.
Mascots are a way of life. I mean, you can't get around it. Everybody has a mascot. But I'm going to say this. I don't see why the Chicago Blackhawks, an original 6 team, has to have a mascot in the first place. I was shocked that they actually had a mascot in the first place, because that's the last team I would think that would need one.
That is the first time I've ever seen that mascot. You're right. Suhan has a mascot.
I have a mascot?
Yes, Suhan Slacks.
No, now
Nice try.
Michael is trying to pretend like I have internet stalkers that match his internet stalkers. You have
There are so many that have popped up
platoon.
lately. Today, I'm looking at Twitter and I see that Russo cable guy or something is like attacking some kid from Wisconsin. I'm just like, fine. It's like, dude, let's chill out. Like, I mean, maybe Russo cable guy is a nice guy, but let's lay off the other Wild fans who have an opinion.
Mike, it comes with stardom, man. You're just going to have to deal with it.
And he deals with it. He complains about it all the time. That's his coping mechanism, is
I wouldn't
complaining
be
about
surprised that Anthony LaPanta isn't Russo Slacks.
Lately, I've been getting just annihilated by LaPanta's hair on Twitter. Just making fun of my bald spot is starting to really get me angry. So,
You have to embrace the baldness, man.
yeah, LaPanta's hair has a Twitter account, and it's just lately just having fun with me.
And, of course, the best of the group is Russo Slacks, who is your primary...
the best of the group.
Your tormentor,
Yeah.
but he's brilliant. He comes up
is
with the
brilliant.
best best Photoshop.
The Starbucks cup over my
It's awesome.
over my face here the other day was my favorite one that he has is me holding the giant cup of coffee because it's the skinniest me I've ever seen. It's me holding this.
See, he loves you.
Like Dane, the Pioneer Press writer, made some joke yesterday about how the period was so boring that he needs more coffee. And Russo Slacks, of course, chimes in with the picture of me holding this just massive cup of coffee. And it's the only one of his ones that I actually genuinely kind of am intrigued
you
by.
protest too much. By the way, Scott Carlson, they can do this show interactively. You can tweet questions to us. You can also comment on the Hell's Kitchen Minneapolis Facebook page. And we have our first comment, Scott Carlson, longtime listener, saying, "Serious topic to start, I see." So I guess we ought to get to some actual topics. One more mascot topic before we move on. As a longtime baseball traditionalist, I don't even know if I'm a traditionalist anymore, but there was a time when I took that stuff seriously. I was really offended when the Twins brought in TC Bear as their mascot. I'm like, this is baseball. You don't have cheerleaders. You don't have mascots. Watch the stinking game. And you know what? Then I got to know the guy who does TC Bear. Now I like him.
He's a really cool guy.
He's a cool guy.
And by
And,
the way,
and not only that, he can hit the ball 8
No
miles.
kidding.
The first time I ever saw TC Bear at Target Field, or at the Metrodome, he's this big left-handed guy, built like a bear, just jacking softballs like 500 feet. I thought, it's Herbeck. It's got to be Herbeck.
Well, you know what? He's the only mascot in baseball that I know of that actually has a stick. He has something he can hang his hat on, and that's hitting
He
the ball a
does.
long way. Although Junction Jack with the Astros used to be his nemesis in the mascot home run hitting contest.
I like the Philly guy.
The
Oh, he's,
fanatic.
he's fantastic.
Some of
those
I will
would
say, mascots are, I made the joke, and by the way, if I offended any mascots out there, I apologize. But but I will tell you, and I was having a conversation with Nordy last week, and I told Nordy he wasn't saying a lot.
He even
back to me.
name drops
This
mascots.
does not sound
he
right.
name drops
Yeah,
the
It
mascots.
doesn't sound right. I was having a conversation with
It was
Nordy.
mostly
I was
a one.
hanging out with
It was
Nordy
a
the other day.
I will say
What language were you speaking?
I just
it
did
was just
LaPanta
me and
making
Nordy.
fun Of Russo.
And he did not break character. There was not him he was not like talking to me through his thing, which I think is the most important part of a mascot, is that he didn't just, sometimes you feel like the mascot's going to lift its like head up and just like start, begin like light a cigarette or something. But he didn't do that. But I was telling Nordy, I'm like, hey, I won't say the
Nordy.
referee, but a referee. I'm going to try to tell the story because the NHL, they're such a bunch of little wimps that they'd probably suspend the ref for talking to me. But a referee was telling me on the road within the last couple of months that he recently did a big NHL event. So I'm not going to say what event, just in case they now go back in their archives. And I guess, all the mascots go to the All-Star games. And this referee was I just said the freaking event. God damn it.
Don't worry.
That's all right.
We'll edit it out. We're not going to edit it out.
So this referee was working some big event, and they're allowed to bring their families. And so all the mascots were there, and Nordy gave his son, who's obviously like probably 4 or 5 years old, a stick. And like a Nordy type of stick, or maybe a Minnesota Wild stick. And so now this kid's favorite mascot is Nordy. Cannot get enough of Nordy. And so now what this referee does is every single game that he works, he'll eventually go to find the mascot and take a picture with that team's mascot. But every one, he wants to know how Nordy is doing. So so I told Nordy this. Nordy seemed pleased.
He should be.
So
That's all he has in life right now.
he gave me a thumbs up.
That's his only purpose in life.
Yeah.
So when you talk about having a great conversation with Nordy, you're just talking, and Nordy's just sitting there standing.
Yeah, it's like you.
Nodding
doing
his
a podcast.
Yeah, it's like every conversation I have with you. By the way, this is getting a little much. I spent Wednesday night with you here. I spent
I know.
Thursday night with you at the Wild game. I'm spending Friday night with you here.
Oh, by the way-
and you tried to talk me into driving you to Mankato tonight. I had to invent that my sister's
I
visiting
know.
to get out of it.
What's at Mankato?
I'm going to see Dave Simonette in concert tonight.
Oh, boy.
Not that he would ever
Trampled
name drop
by-
Dave Simonette.
Trampled
but-
by Turtles, Dead Man Winter. Album's coming out January 26th.
You think Simonette would be nice
Friend of
to
the
just
show.
have a concert closer to you?
Well, he's
We're
got
gonna
a
get
bunch
Dave.
on the docket.
We are going to get Dave Simonette on this stage one of these days.
There we should.
The best part of tonight is I'm not in Dallas with LaPanta and Greenlay. That's all I'm saying.
That's,
You think you need a break?
I actually thank God for that pretty much every day of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, new segment today's show. We'll use it both during the Russo Suhan show, which is most Wednesdays here, 6 o'clock at Hell's Kitchen, and also when Michael can make the Friday Sports from Hell show. Michael is going to read texts from his mother.
Yeah. I got a lot of ammunition today.
So tell me when you're ready to read a text from your mother.
We'll go. Well, this is Lavelle Neal III. We should introduce him to the show.
We should. Yeah, Lavelle is going to stop playing tennis and looking back and forth. We're actually going to ask him a question. Okay, you guys have both been covering sports for a long time. We're all old. We've all been doing this for a long time. We've covered multiple sports. We've dealt with multiple figures. We've name-dropped many people. PJ Fleck, from the outside, first impression.
Nuts. Absolutely nuts. His introductory press conference, I could not believe. When he said, I eat difficult conversations for breakfast, I almost drove off the road because I was driving down the highway at the time. This guy, he's got a lot of energy. He's got a lot of charisma, and that's great. But the speeches, how long he's going to be able to run with these? In this market, people get tired of it. Maybe the young kids that are cycling in and out of the program, won't get tired of it. But this is going to be amazing to watch over the next few years under his administration, because this guy is just a walking one-liner.
I have an honest question. When has a coach like this ever worked? I don't remember Bobby Bowden acting like this. I definitely don't see Nick Saban acting like this. I don't remember Tom Osborne acting like this. Frank Beamer, Joe Paterno, maybe Switzer. But what other great college coaches has this shtick worked?
That's a really good question. I will say that the first name that comes to mind, and it's not exactly analogous, is Pete Carroll. Is your ultimate player's coach, and he gets to know his players. He loves his players. When he worked at USC, he would go into the worst neighborhoods in Compton and Watts and recruit kids, and they would love him. His players buy in. He lets them be themselves. If they go a little crazy sometimes, like Richard Sherman, he still sticks with them. It's not the same thing. He's not running around chanting slogans at people, but he does have that kind of enthusiasm. The fascinating thing, as Lavelle pointed out, is the constant use of slogans. At what point does that hit a point of diminishing returns? And can you stay with one program a long time and have that work?
Or will a printing company run out of paper printing the bumper stickers from the phrases that PJ is going to say? Because there's already a Rose Bowl T-shirt that's being promoted out there, and it's ROWS Bowl, as in let's roll the boat to the Rose Bowl.
See, I always thought row it meant regulation overtime win. I got confused by it.
It's so good to have the hockey
Well,
perspective
yeah,
here for all things.
I think he ripped off the ROW category from the NHL standings.
I think you guys
Saying.
both brought up great points on this because it obviously did. It's not like Tim Brewster, who had never been a coordinator or head coach above the high school and had no idea what he was doing. And from my information, talking to people over there, was also a really bad guy.
Knew that from day one.
Yes. PJ Fleck, I think he's a good guy. I think his players do like him. He did go 13-0 in a what has been a difficult conference. So there's something there. The question is, does it translate to here, and does it sustain?
And the fact that 9 kids from Western Michigan were willing to flip and follow him to Minnesota shows that the draw, the pull, the motivation factor that he has. So, Dabo Swinney, he's kind of.
I was going to say that's another good comp.
He's kind of on that scale, but I also have heard that Swinney runs just horrifically hard, difficult, demanding practices and screams at players and gets on their asses a lot. So, I mean, there's two sides to the coin here. And so maybe Fleck is like that as well. I mean, he motivates the kids and works the hell out of them in practice. So I'm curious to see how this plays out.
I will say that it's the most interesting hire they could have made.
Yes.
They could have gone out and gotten a coordinator. We'd all be bored with them already. They could have gone and hired Les Miles, who I would have been very entertained by and who's won a national championship. But Les is 60. And so often when you hire guys like that, it's a retirement job. It's a golden parachute job, but they're not really completely invested in it. I mean, Jimmy Johnson's a great coach. When he went to coach the Miami Dolphins, it wasn't the same as him coming in fresh and ambitious with the Dallas Cowboys. Fleck is going to be fascinating. The question is, how long will the fascination last?
Well, and really, what did they have to lose? I think they did. They went out and they got a guy with obvious credentials based on what he did last year at his school, and really, he's got such a good personality that initially the amount of University of Minnesota collegiates that are so alienated by what just went down with the hierarchy at that university that are so ticked off and dismayed and say they want out and all that stuff. He's probably a guy that can corral them back in,
Yep.
At least initially with a pretty charismatic personality. But again, I look back in the history of college football and I just wonder, maybe it's a different era now. Maybe you can motivate. Every coach I mention, old school. The only one I think I mentioned, obviously, then Saban and Spurrier. Everybody else is out of the game, so maybe it's maybe it will work today.
Mike, who is the NHL's version of PJ Fleck?
That's a great question. I mean,
I don't think it works in hockey.
yeah, I don't. They're
I'm
really,
not sure it works anywhere.
I mean, not any not any that's pops in my head. I mean, I look at Boudreaux as having a different personality than most NHL coaches, but I can't think of anybody that's got that kind of. Stand up in front of an audience and give a bunch of,
And let's be honest, even if his shtick works at this level, there's no way it would work with adult athletes who are getting paid a lot of money, know they have power, and know they don't really have to listen to the coach. They can always just get the coach fired. Yeah. You are in a short window. You are completely dependent on your college coach to give you playing time and to promote you and to keep you healthy and put you on the right path to a pro career. Kids don't have any power.
No.
Pro athletes have more power than the coach in many ways. By the way, one more note on PJ Fleck. I have to admit, I did love it when I'm at the Gopher basketball game the other day, and PJ does the speech and then stays on the court to throw plates to Red Panda during the halftime.
I saw the replay.
That was awesome. I will give him that. Go ahead.
He's a buddy of mine who works for a radio station in town. He was waiting to get PJ on air, and so he's sitting there just shooting a breeze with PJ. He said, "PJ, I'm Justin. How you doing? How's everything?" He says, "I am elite." That was his response.
He said, "I am elite."
Yeah, he says elite as much as Derek Falvey says collaborative.
But he should add a word to the sentence. Even an awkward sentence like "I'm doing elite" at least makes elite.
He says, "I am elite." That was his response.
That sounds that doesn't sound right. Before we get to hockey and some other sports
I'm
and
going to start
NFL
to hate
weekend.
the word elite.
I think I've always hated the word elite. Before we get to hockey and some NFL weekend stuff, give us an update on Brian Dozier, the Twins, and if the Twins are going to do anything interesting this entire offseason.
Well, I thought it was interesting that the Twins came out this week and said, well, we never really had a deadline to move Dozier before deciding to take him to spring training. Funny, I have a text message on my phone from a source who pretty much indicated that very thing a couple weeks ago, when I wrote the Dozier story. I don't think he's going to be traded before spring training. I think they're going to start the season with him and revisit this maybe at the trade deadline. But I agree with their method here. I still don't think they should move him unless they get a nice package in return. Players get traded 3 for 1, 2 for 1 at least all the time. And if they are offering De Leon or De Leon and a player that's not acceptable in their eyes, sit and wait, man. There's no rush to move this guy. Start the season with him. See if they can get hot at the beginning of the year.
You can't sell low.
No, and they've done that so many times.
You can make a case for trading him. You can make a case for keeping him. But what you can't do is sell low. You cannot take your best player and your best personality on a terrible team, trade him, and not get something that can turn you into a contender within the next 3 years. You just can't do it. And I don't think they're going to be able to do it.
If the White Sox could get 3 pitching prospects, including one kid that throws 100 miles an hour, for Adam Bleepin Eaton, then the Twins should get multiple prospects in return for
That's
Dozier.
exactly right. Eaton is not anywhere near as valuable as Brian Dozier.
Not at all.
Michael has no interest in baseball, so we'll move on to.
Just putting on chapstick.
Wow. Give me more for
This is.
And I was corresponding with Vicky on Twitter. But it was a fascinating conversation.
And by the way, we will at this point also, we have some regulars here. If anybody wants to ask a question about any topic, feel free to walk up, ask a question at the mic. And we have a Facebook comment from Chris Miller, a mutual friend of ours, who from the Star Tribune is covering the Wild in Dallas and then Chicago if Michael's up on stage.
I'm flying to Chicago. My editor gave me permission to take this game off. I did want to go to Dallas, but the Wolves are there on Sunday, so we figured Kent can cover both.
There's an interesting aspect of Mikko Koivu's career. Let's get to that. I do want to thank Hell's Kitchen for hosting this show, for hosting the Russo Suhan Show and other podcasts. All those podcasts are up at Minnesota Sports Podcast Network, MNSPN.com. The archives are up there, all the different shows. We have a new fan show. We have a new college basketball show, the One and Done show that's up there. So we have 7 shows that are up there, always being recycled and updated. Please check those out. And thanks to our primary sponsors on the podcast network, Crown Bank at crown-bank.com. And also TSR Injury Law sponsors the basketball show, Twill in the Edina Galleria, twillmn.com. And FixologyRepair.com. That's Fixology, 3rd floor of Mall of America near Nordstrom. John Hedges usually comes out for the shows and joins in with the questioning and everything else. So you and Mikko Koivu have been together for a long time.
Yeah, he was the first player I ever talked to at the Wild. I still remember he used to sit in Charlie Coyle's stall, which is right when you walk into the Wild locker room, straight ahead is Coyle's stall. Second from in. And first player I went up to, it was just him. You know, I'd heard about this hotshot first-round pick from 2001. I obviously knew he was Saku Koivu's brother. I didn't know anybody on the Wild because it was 2005. I just moved here on September 9th. Camp started on the 12th. He spoke very little English. He was a little mistrustful of me, and, you know, it's pretty much nothing's changed.
And now he's really mistrustful of you.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. So
What did you do?
So we were looking it up today.
It's just Mikko.
And Mikko, I was actually just texting with him about this because he wanted to know how I even figured it out. But he has 158 skaters that he's been teammates with and 12 goalies. And since 2005-06, Elias actually told me the Wild have had 172 different players on the team, which is 17th in the NHL. But remember, Koivu didn't start his career until November 5th because Thomas Vanek kneed him in the final exhibition game in Rochester, New York, and he missed the first month of the season with a sprained MCL. So his debut was delayed. But yeah, I've known him for a long time. I mean, there's no doubt I've seen him grow up to being a father, a father of 2, you know, a husband. And and really it's pretty impressive when you think about it now. I know Mikko is always going to have his detractors here, but the guy's played 803 games on this team now. Most all time. He's their all-time leading scorer. He's their all-time leading assist guy. He's their all-time leading power play point guy, multi-game point guy, most shots on the team. There's, other than goals, which belongs to Gaborik, there's basically no offensive category that he doesn't have. And you do have to wonder, and I was talking to Craig Leopold about this the other day, is he signed a 7-year deal. He's got this year and another year left, and all of us figured, well, they're going to finally let him walk. But now you look at it, and the way he's playing now, obviously you can't sign him at a 7-year deal again, and you can't sign him at a $7 million contract again yet. But there's nobody in the organization that you could put out there long-term in situations that he's put out right now. Certainly not Hala, certainly not the guys in the minors right now. So you can see the Wild continually having to re-sign him, and there's a chance Mikko doesn't leave here after next season.
And that's the thing about covering one team for so long. You end up covering players for the whole career sometimes, And I was just thinking about this the other day because Trevor Plouffe just signed with the A's, and I covered all of Trevor Plouffe's career with the Twins, and I watched him go from a guy who had a lot of talent, was trying to figure out how to be a good player, and a guy who had to be called into the principal's office for a few times for not having his focus on the game. But I think
By you?
No, I had nothing to do with his transgressions. But he made himself into a decent player, and now he's moving on to Oakland. I was like, man, I sent him a text. I said, I just realized I remember talking to your mother the day you got drafted. I watched you go from a guy trying to figure out how to play to become at least a solid player that was respected in the clubhouse. So, best of luck and everything. So I really appreciate that. But I still remember when they were mad at Plouffe on many levels for how
I remember me being mad at Plouffe and him being mad at me because I was mad at him.
I do remember that.
We did not get along for a long time, and I didn't like his game for a long time. The amazing thing is that I thought he rounded into being a really nice player and a good guy.
He started breaking down.
And then he ends up having no value on the open market. That tells you how bad the Twins are. That for the last couple of years, we thought of Trevor Plouffe as one of their better players, and the rest of baseball had very little interest in him.
And the thing too, he also had an injury-plagued year.
Yeah.
The year when he needed to make some money or get cut loose. But he also has gone from being an incredibly sensitive guy to a guy who understands criticism a little bit better, and it was actually pretty good to deal with and get quotes from in the clubhouse.
In this Koivu story that I wrote tomorrow, I wrote a story on how Eric Stahl is really taking a lot of the pressure off Koivu, but Stahl will tell you Koivu's taking a lot of pressure off him. And I talked to Chuck Fletcher for the story, and he said, and he had a great quote, that he thinks Mikko Koivu is just in a great place right now on and off the ice. And I think, being a parent, he's no longer uptight about everything. And we were joking on the last podcast about how San Jose, Mikko and I were shooting the breeze in the locker room, and he was giving me a bunch of crap, and I was asking him, like, you change your training. What have you changed? He goes, oh, you have to come to Finland to see it. I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden, when he saw that I was serious about coming to Finland, he's like, you know what? Maybe I just tell you what I've changed. I'm like, no, Mikko. Not only is the invitation on, but I think I'm going to stay at your new compound that you're building on this island that's taken 2 years. He's literally building a compound on an island in Finland.
There's islands on Finland?
Yeah, there is. And it's taken like 2 years to build and everything.
What's his brother doing now?
I think he's back in Finland, but I'm not actually positive because I didn't see him in Anaheim when we were there. So, Mikko's pretty private about his family.
I'm private about the houses I build on islands too, though, so I get it.
I would, yeah.
Question from Ben Shearer, old listener, longtime listener, not old. Asked the question on Facebook Live.
I think Ben is a nurse down at Mayo.
Oh, cool.
I met him, I think if it's the same Ben, I met him at Red Rocks last year.
He had a question on Facebook Live. Hell's Kitchen's Facebook Live page is the best place to do this. Christian Folan did his interpretation of Jared Spurgeon last night with his goal. Does that mean we should expect him to be a more mobile defenseman from here on out, Russo?
Well, I don't think that he's got Spurgeon in him. I mean, Spurgeon is just a special guy. But I think Folan's a heck of a player, and I think he can do more than that. He certainly has the shot. I wish he would do more than that. Maybe he's being told to kind of stay back and be more defensive defenseman and physical. And I don't remember if I put it on my blog, so if I didn't, it was very astute by Ben, because I will say that Folan said after the game that he was trying to pull his inner Spurgeon, and he said because it was asked of Foles, was that a set play, because it certainly looked like the give and go was set, and he said no. When I sent the pass down to Eric, I've seen Spurgeon do the same thing so many times. I just decided to do it as well. And by the way, he's lucky that went through, because remember, Stahl would have been the guy to cover for him. So if that puck was turned over, that would have been a problem. Probably
the Wild are living large right now, man. Everything's clicking. They're getting shots on the net. They're either getting tipped or they're taking a deflection. I mean, last night was just a joke. I felt bad for Carey Price.
I think Lavelle's a hater.
So, anyway, Folan, do you need any stitches for his mouth after that shot he took?
No, I think he's fine. It is funny what you just said about Lavelle. I do get the impression as a Blackhawk fan, Lavelle's just kind of just like, yeah.
It's just the Wild.
You know,
You know
It's
what?
just the Wild.
The thing
It's
about
just
that,
January.
though, I understand what Packer fans are like now, because when you talk about when the Packers were stinking, everybody was laughing at them. Oh, watch us, we're going to get on a roll and make the playoffs, and everything. And they have. You know, I don't like this being smug, but I am being smug right now.
Well, you have right. 3 Stanley Cups in 7 years does it.
You know, the Wild could do everything they want during the regular season, but when the light shines the brightest, we'll see who does
I
the best.
absolutely. That's what I told Kent to write about for Sunday's paper for his game notebook tomorrow. Is look, you know, everybody has the right to be excited about this, because none of us have ever seen this team play like this. But they're playing Chicago for the first time, and yeah, they went 5-0 last year against them. But the reality is that until the Wild go and beat the Blackhawks in the playoffs, or surpass the Blackhawks in rounds in the playoffs, nobody's going to give a darn. I mean,
No.
you got to go through Chicago, and it only counts in April, and that's why you know, the Blackhawks, you know, they kind of, I think they even roll their eyes at this type of thing.
Well, it'll be interesting Sunday. The Blackhawks are playing the Fighting Ovechkins tonight, so we'll see how much they have left for the Wild after that.
I mean, it is interesting if the Wild, if Chicago loses in regulation tonight to Washington, if the Wild win tomorrow in Dallas, they'll take the Central lead. But even if Chicago gets a point or two tonight, the Wild sweep this weekend, they take the Central lead, and again, they're after tonight, they're going to have 5 games in hand on them. Tomorrow it'll be 4, but you know, this is, look, like I said on the last podcast, this is real now. I mean, and they're just, you know, it would be so wild, like even last night, to not take advantage of that. You know, you're playing a tired team that's decimated by injury. And you know, how many times over the years have the Wild been in a situation like that and just come home and still lay an egg? And now they never do that. You know, they debunk every trend that you worry about. They debunk the whole, you know, losing streak after a winning streak trend. How many times this season have they come back from a long road trip and still won, when most teams will you know, be flat or lay an egg? And you know, the other thing, not to keep on going on and on about this, but
you haven't been going on and on, not at all.
But I was doing a radio thing about this morning, and you know, it's amazing the way that winning streaks start. Like I still remember them blowing that game in Vancouver and how absolutely pissed off Bruce Boudreau was, and he made them practice the next day in Calgary. They played very well against Calgary, but still lost in a shootout. But he was so calm and fine after that game. And then they go to Edmonton, and he was in a pretty good mood. And they go, and they don't play that great in Edmonton, but they wind up rallying in that game. And Mikko Koivu scores an overtime winner. And you look at them now since, and that all started with just a little win in Edmonton, and boom, they've lost once in regulation since. It's just nuts.
Wow. Look up the tweet from Russo's mom that we're going to read today. Text.
All right, text.
Russo's
All right.
mom. There's a new segment on the show. Michael's going to read.
So
and
my
text.
mother, I mean, the genesis of this is, I showed Jim yesterday because I just was, I found this funny. My mother, even though she knows that I'm extremely busy during a game and on deadline and don't have time to really be bothered by looking at my phone, she texts me constantly during during games. But sometimes when she's not texting me, I'm like wondering even if she even knows she forgot the game was going on. So last night, her first one was just classic, okay? And it was so funny I had to turn to Jim and show it. So yesterday, 7:17 p.m., yes, Folan, I must run out and take Ollie out. So
That's her dog.
Just out of the blue, yes, Folan, and like I need to run out now and take her dog out.
That's valuable
That's what she
information.
texted me during the game.
That's an update.
Yeah.
Where's she texting from? What region of the country?
Atlanta.
Okay.
Stahl better have more than 1 year contract, and oh my God. They have to take Price out. That's my favorite one. If it's 7-0, do we get 3 points?
We need to have.
Okay.
At some point, we're gonna have a call-in segment with your mom every show.
It sounds like we got to get her on the show. We got to incorporate.
Well, she's been on the show.
Here's what I woke up to this
She's the
morning.
best part of the show.
Here's what I woke up to this morning. Boudreaux and the team must be very happy. I also like his strategy of changing positions or lines if they are doing poorly. Yo made the mistake of keeping status quo, so I write back yes. So then she goes, am I right? And if I am, are you happy with me? So I go, so you know what I go? Yes, mother.
Yes, mother.
That was the last conversation of the day.
And Lavelle, if you don't know, we've had Barbara on the show several
have?
times, and she's so much better than we are at this. She's so much better. She is the show. She really
I
is.
did warn her that I was probably going to start this segment with you, but she told me I couldn't use the voice. When I said, yeah, it's going to be a constant segment on the show, but I'm
Should
going
I
to read
do
it
the
like
voice?
she's like, you could do the voice.
I don't know if I can. I'll have to practice.
Is she a hockey fan because you're a hockey writer, or was she a hockey fan?
I don't know. When I
you were
used to
younger.
cover Florida, I used to get them tickets to my mom and my stepfather tickets to the game. And I used to look down at their seats, and Lenny would be watching the ice, and my mom would be staring at the press box. So I'm not exactly sure. But I will say when my stepfather got sick and eventually passed away, I think that my mom really became a big Wild fan to really pass up the time and have something to talk to me about and kind of have a passion in her life. And so she is a fan. I mean, it's crazy. She probably has not missed a Wild game in the last 3 or 4 years. It's nuts. And she lives
Okay.
again in Atlanta.
Wow.
It is amazing, too.
She does know a lot now about the team.
She does.
Yeah, too much.
It's also fascinating to me that so many other sports you feel like fans can come and go. You know, okay, oh, the Vikings are good this year. I'm all in. Okay, oh, the Twins are good this year. I'm going to pay attention. Hockey fans, once they are in for
Yeah.
life.
No doubt. I mean, we were just talking to Boudreaux in Anaheim, and he said he was talking about how passionate the fan base is, but he said the biggest difference is that in Anaheim, they got 50,000 fans. And they're as passionate as fans are in Minnesota, but in Minnesota there's 1 million.
Yep.
You know, and that's the difference is that the passionate fans are unbelievably passionate and loyal to their sport and their team, and you know, and maybe more so than other sports even. I mean,
I think so.
How many states can dedicate one day to hockey on every level, high school, college, and pro? Yeah, I think Minnesota's one. Maybe Michigan could do it if they wanted to, but Minnesota definitely is. That shows you how much people
And there's a
care.
certain
How
irony
much is
that-
in the blood of people in the sport.
And there's a certain irony that this year's Hockey Day in Minnesota comes against the Ducks, which is kind of
Yes.
pretty funny.
Wow.
Let's bring our soccer correspondent into play. Anything going on with Minnesota United?
Today was the super draft.
Uh-huh.
And
So tell me about it, because I don't even know how to ask an intelligent question about it. So just I'll do what a lot of the TV people in our town do. Just talk about soccer.
All right. Well, today was a super draft, and Minnesota United already has about 8 players on the roster. They got to fill out their roster.
8 doesn't sound like enough.
No, it's not enough. So they still have some work to do to fill out a roster. They got to sign players and make a couple of moves here. But I think MLS has a 4-round draft. They had the first 2 rounds today, and then they meet next Tuesday, have a conference call for the final 2 rounds. So Minnesota United had the first overall pick in the MLS draft today, and they took a forward from UCLA, which is a good place to get a forward from because they usually have some guys who can put the ball in the net. His name is Abu Danladi. He's from Ghana, and he had a very successful career with the Bruins. And I don't know if he can come in and play right away. It's you don't see too many impact players come out of college, you know. If it's a young player that can get on the field, I hate to say it, it's usually a Latin player, somebody from Europe who they get over, you know. But a lot of college players coming right in, like Jordan Morris is like the one example of a college kid who could come right in and produce like he did in Seattle. So,
Is there a feeder system in do they have like a minor league affiliate that they send him to if he doesn't or he is on the roster and
MLS teams do have agreements with lower level clubs, and there's some swapping of players during the season, but it's not like full fledged like in baseball. You know, so but if they have young players in need of development, they'll place them on teams and in lower levels and allow them to get experience.
Have you written a column yet on Adrian Heath?
I have not.
their coach. I had him on when I was filling in for Paul Allen about 3 weeks ago. What a freaking delight!
Oh, yeah?
That guy, you will love this guy. He wants to talk. Incredible personality, hilarious. He was so bothered by the coffee at KFan that it turned into like a 5-minute conversation on the air. And he could talk to you about hockey. He could talk to you about anything. I mean, he's a great salesman. I mean, it's funny when they told me that Adrian was coming on that day. I was nervous until they told me that he was coming in studio, because I don't care how little I know about the subject. If I could look you face to face and have a conversation with you, we could kill 15, 20 minutes on the radio, right? And this guy, I told Eric Nordquist, the producer, afterwards, I'm like, I'll have him on every single time I'm on The Fan.
I think one of the reasons Minnesota United has their headquarters in Golden Valley is because it's close to the radio station.
Yeah.
Because they can always just show up and sit in the studio
Yeah.
and spread the word.
Yeah.
So good people. I mean, I've known Manny for years.
Yeah.
I knew Manny when he was a player in MLS. So, and the fact that he's running the player development now for them is a good sign.
How did I missed all that. How did that even work? Did he know that he wasn't going to be the coach?
Well, he was coaching. He was coaching this lower level team for a few years, but he got kicked upstairs a couple years ago, and so then he got hired as personnel guy for Minnesota United, like during the season last year. So they knew he was transferring over.
So he knew that he wasn't going to be the coach when they became the MLS team.
Exactly.
Okay.
So he's brought in some other people, like Amos McGee's back in town. Amos McGee played with Manny in high school at St. Paul Central. St. Paul Central had Manny Lagos, Amos McGee, and Tony Sana. And Tony Sana is the most decorated player of those three. He had many caps for the United States team, and he had a successful career in Germany. All three of those guys were on the same high school team in St. Paul, the St. Paul Central. They're actually ranked #1 in the country during their run there.
And Tony Santa has gone on to great success locally in business.
Yes, he's an entrepreneur. He does a lot of charity work. He has a foundation to help underprivileged youth. I mean, a few years ago, I went down to Haiti to help help people who have been affected by the hurricane down there. So he jet sets. He's busy, and he's done. And I expect Tony to have some sort of role with Minnesota United going forward. I'm just not sure what role it's going to be.
How about Chelsea, by the way? I remember when the Wild's streak was snapped, I looked, and at least Chelsea's wasn't at that point.
Well, everybody's waiting for tomorrow morning at 7:40. I think it's tomorrow or Sunday morning at 6:45 or 7:45. It's Manchester United versus Liverpool. That is the Hatfield McCoy.
You're not gonna believe it.
That's
I've
the
seen-
Bears Packers
Yeah.
of England soccer.
I've seen Man U versus Liverpool. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I saw Chelsea open against West Brom at Stamford Bridge, and the next day I went up to Liverpool and they played. Man U played there.
How many years ago was that?
That would have been 4 or 5. It was the year after Chelsea won it all.
So Rooney was still playing for Man U.
So their first game, I went the game and that's what made me become a Chelsea supporter, even though that's a bunch of crap. Is I went my first ever game in England seeing was at Chelsea. They just won it all, and they're playing West Brom, who just got relegated up, and yeah, and I think Chelsea won 7-1. Drogba got a hat trick.
Didier Drogba, one of my favorite players.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So
Alec Fisher came on, who listens to a lot of shows. He asked, did we talk about baseball yet? Yes. By the way, you were talking earlier about being a Blackhawk fan and being kind of arrogant about it and all that. You only need in this town, you only need to remember one sentence. Just say, I am elite. I am elite.
I am elite.
That's all you got.
That's right. No, we did talk with some baseball. And last week the Twins did sign Nick Tepesch and Ryan Vogelsong to minor league contracts. And I expect those guys to pitch for the Twins sometime during the season. Because you know how it is now. You need like 8 or 9 pitchers to get starters to get through a season. Because someone's going to break down, someone's going to stink and need to go down to the minors for a repair, and then they're going to have to call up some replacements. So I expect Vogelsong and Tepesch to pitch for the Twins this year. So and Tepesch is a total Thad Levine signing there because he's from Texas and that's where Thad was at. So that's his boy. Vogelsong was kind of a late bloomer in his career. Unfortunately, he got hit with a pitch while batting for the Pirates last year and missed a bunch of games.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
He's trying to recover from that. So
Before we're going to get to some NFL talk, I did want to ask kind of one other cross-sport big-picture topic. We talked about Fleck and whether his approach would work here. How about Tom Thibodeau? He's a really smart coach. He's a really good coach. I think he's a really good guy. And he stands on the sideline and screams at his players every minute of every game. Does that work? Does that work short term? Does that work long term? Because, like you made, that was a great point you made, Michael. We haven't really seen somebody like PJ Fleck have great success long term. Have we seen somebody like Tom Thibodeau have success long term?
Well, I would say that in basketball it's different. I just. When I look at Tom Thibodeau, I remember the games in 2005 when I covered the Miami Heat and seeing Stan Van Gundy and that same type of thing. And I just think it kind of lends itself to basketball coach. I remember interviewing Stan Van Gundy so many times after Heat games, and the guy barely had a voice. And you talked to Stan Van Gundy, and he was the nicest guy, to talk to. So I do think it's very, I don't know. I hate to say it like this because I don't know Fleck, but I see a lot of phony and salesmen there where, to me, Thibodeau is just acting the way most basketball coaches act.
It's not phony. It's the opposite of phony. It's almost too raw, too real.
Yeah. Well, I would say whether it works or not, I'm worried about Thibodeau's health. First of all, he should get an endorsement with like Halls.
He's never happy
because I can't. Yeah, and if he's and. I just think when you have a young team, he's going to need to dial down his temperature. His heart's going to explode on the sideline.
I just think that NBA coaches are always on edge. They're always wound up and uptight, and most of them yell. I know for some reason we hear about Tibbs yelling. They were blowing out someone the other day, and someone left it was Houston. They were playing well against Houston late in the fourth quarter, and someone didn't rotate, and so Anderson for Houston sank a three, and Thibodeau calls timeout. You could hear him screaming about not rotating on defense, and I know they were up big, but he's trying to instill something in his team. I've been fortunate to cover some NBA games before they moved the media into the corner of the arena, so I've sat next to the Wolves bench. Flip used to yell the entire game. Flip always screamed. There was one time they gave up an 8-0 run at home to start a game, and he calls a timeout, and he is just going bananas. You guys aren't bleeping competing. What the bleep is going on out there? Get your bleeping butts out of your bleeping heads and start competing. Bleep, 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 bleep. I've heard Flip scream. I think NBA coaches scream by nature. I think it's in their DNA. I don't think what Thibodeau is doing is any different. I know
It's just a little more relentless.
All right, well, how would you compare Thibodeau to someone like Stan Van Gundy, who also never looks like he's happy?
Van Gundy's pretty close to it.
Yeah.
He is.
Isn't it interesting when you look back at mid-November and really October, even when the Wild were 6-2-1, at how Boudreaux, Zimmer, and Thibodeau were there, like almost competing for being the coach that was most dismayed with their team. Remember that? It became like a thing on KFan about how basically like every day they just play different sound bites of every coach ripping on their team, and where the Wild were then.
That's another
where they are now.
Zimmer's
it's
another
pretty
unhappy
crazy.
guy. You're right. Definitely is an unhappy gentleman. And I'm sure he's going to be unhappy the entire offseason about how this season turned out. That means he'll be unhappy in the training camp next year, which means he'll be unhappy going into the regular season.
You mentioned Flip screaming at people. The great thing was every time I saw like Kevin Garnett or or somebody else screw up, he'd yell at Wally Zerbiak.
Well,
no matter who screwed up, he yelled at Wally.
All right, there was another game I was covering, and the great thing about being at courtside, you could hear the strategy going on in the huddles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I thought it was a great tool for NBA writers back
Absolutely.
in the day. So
I miss it.
Flip was talking, okay, when we come out of this break, we're going to set up in this defense. While I need you at the top of the key and be prepared to trap on the inbounds play. All right, so I heard that. So they slap hands, go out, run out the court. Wally immediately goes and runs it to the corner. And I just heard Flip tell him to go to the top of the key.
I wasn't saying he was wrong to yell at Wally.
Flip is having a conniption. He's like, Wally, what the hell did I just tell you? So I think Wally was like Kadir for Gardy. He was some guy who was always on his case. But I'm telling you, Flip yelled a lot.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for being here.
I got one more Flip story. Another game I was covering. Flip's mad at the official. And so he's screaming from the sideline, that's 3 seconds. That's 3 seconds. Damn it, it's 3 seconds. 3 seconds. He's stamping his foot. So the ball goes out of bounds. Referee comes over and tells Flip, you need to stop taking those speed counting classes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And Flip says, I don't count that fast.
That is the difference in the sports. The NBA, it's so up close and personal with the coach and the official standing right in front of them. And the nature of the sport is the rule book is written as if it's a non-contact sport, and it is a collision sport. You have 10 big guys smacking into each other constantly. Any foul or violation can be called at any time. So the coaches feel compelled to try to fight for that one call that might make the difference.
What you just said about the referee and flip, some of my favorite stories are talking to referees and linesmen in concierge lounges and hearing the stuff that goes on the ice. And the funniest one that I found on this one of these recent road trips is a linesman told me that one of the Wild players came up to him and goes, "Hey, Liney," meaning linesman. And the linesman told him, "Get the F away from me." He goes, "Do I call you freaking left wing?
Lefty.
Get away from me." You know, like
That's awesome. Another Facebook Live question from Alec. Alec Fisher, did Joey Bautista even think about playing here?
I don't know. I don't know what Joey Batista was thinking about. As far I'm sure he's worried about having a job and getting paid this year. He's probably
Jose?
Well, Jose. Some people call him Joey.
he follows me
Joey
on
Bass.
he follows me on Twitter.
What?
Yeah.
He follows me on Twitter, too. He follows like all
Thousands,
sports writers,
yeah,
thousands of sports writers.
Well, I ticked him off a few days ago then because I told him that the Twins are, despite some people speculating, the Twins have no interest in Jose Batista joining them. And the other thing too, the word is that he's not the best teammate, and he's very high maintenance, and he's a diva. So I think that's one of the reasons why you haven't seen Toronto work hard to bring him back. So he may be stuck trying to sign a one-year deal to try to resurrect his market value and get back into it next year when there's going to be a lot of money spent in the free agent market. But no, I don't think Joey ever had to. Well, Batista probably thought about, well, I hit a lot of home runs at Target Field because he does.
Yeah, but he also gets to face Twins pitchers at Target Field.
Yeah, that's right. He wouldn't face
We have
Twins
to grade
pitchers
on a
anymore.
curve here.
So no, I don't think he thought about playing in Minnesota one bit, and I definitely know that the Twins weren't thinking about signing him either.
We're winding down the show here at Hell's Kitchen, 9th and Nicollet, downtown Minneapolis. Lot of space here. There's a pub, there's a Minnesota room, there's the big stage room that we're in right now. Cool place for happy hour, cool place for brunch, breakfast all day, drinks late at night. It's just a cool place to come by. Tell them we sent you. A couple Twitter questions, some NFL thoughts quickly, and then our final segment, that's just your opinion, man. You got to give me one
I have to go to
more opinion.
Mankato at some point too.
What'd you say?
I have to go to Mankato.
Yes, you do. The good thing is you haven't complained about it at all the last 3 days. From
saying.
our friend Mike Burgoyne, who usually is worried about the Iowa Wild, why does it seem like no matter what, the Wild don't get respect from the national media?
I don't know. It's funny that Mike said that. I was reading this national story today about Columbus's captain, and I was thinking to myself, like, we never hear, you never see somebody parachute in here from national media and do a story on whoever, and maybe it's just.
It's because
maybe
Russo
it is,
has already
I
done
mean,
all the stories.
I mean, it sounds stupid, but maybe I wouldn't say it's East bias, but I would say most of the national sports writers are located out east.
Yep.
And so when teams like Columbus show up in Washington, where this guy is based, or New York, it's just easier for that to happen. When I was going for that, when the NHL, tried to get me to go to that job, the reason why they wanted me to move to New York was its proximity to so many places. So I think it's more where we're located, even though that sounds like a easy thing since we're a Delta hub and it's very easy to get in here. And also the Wild are incredible. I mean, I could tell you and it also only comes to my head because I just got an email from him, but Devin Dubnyk. I mean, like today, like the Wild are so good at getting guys on the phone for you, and even the Chicago Tribune today got Dubnyk on the phone. I mean, it's like, that's just what the Wild do, so there's really no excuse. So I do think that there comes a point here where it's just absurd that the Wild are just so under the radar. I don't get it. I don't get it because there's so many great stories on this team right now. Eric Stahl has become an amazing story in this league right now, and obviously Bruce Boudreau and to me now the renaissance of Mikko Koivu, and there's a lot of great stories here. Jared Spurgeon might be the best defenseman on the team. That's a good story.
And that's not because Suter's slipping. Suter's playing great.
Suter's playing great, but Spurgeon is irreplaceable.
All right, NFL thoughts. As either a fan or a writer, who would you like to see win this weekend?
Oh, who would I like to see win? I'd like to see Atlanta beat Seattle. I like watching their offense. I think Matt Ryan's having the best year of his career, and he's going to be the NFL MVP. I would like to see New England lose, but there's no way they're going to lose
Not
to
gonna
Houston
happen.
at home. They're a 15-point favorite. I'd love to see Dallas beat Green Bay, and I think that's going to happen. Because I think the running game is going to get going with Ezekiel Elliott, and then I'll allow Prescott to take advantage of the Packers secondary, which can be had. And then Kansas City and Pittsburgh, it's a toss-up. Roethlisberger is not as great on the road as he is at home, and the Kansas City has a decent defense. I think the Chiefs can pull that one out, but it's going to be crazy. They've already pushed the game tonight because I guess there's an ice storm warning in Kansas City. So it's no longer the first game; it's the second game on Sunday. So that'll give Kansas City fans a lot of time to get liquored up before that one. It should be a raucous atmosphere at Arrowhead.
You know what I root for in the playoffs as an uninterested observer in many ways? I just want to see good quarterback play. So I would like to see the Packers win because I like to watch Aaron Rodgers. I would like to see Seattle play because I think Russell Wilson's one of the most entertaining quarterbacks in league history. I don't really like the Patriots' aura or vibe or what they stand for, but I love watching Brady play. I don't want to get to next weekend and not be watching good quarterbacks. So I always root for quarterbacks because quarterbacks are
How about
entertaining.
Ben Roethlisberger almost getting hurt or maybe getting hurt at the end of that game? No reason why he's in there.
No, and
and that was my problem with last night with Carey Price. By the way, it's
right.
I get that he wanted to stay in. I think it's admirable what he said after the game.
Pinata.
He like your Blackhawk mascot. Like he said after the game, I didn't want to come out. Nobody else has the right to get out of a game like this. Well, why should I? I get it. But this guy's coming off a major abdominal injury last year, and you have him out there in a 7-0 game.
Crazy. Coaches make the mistake in all sports all the time.
Get him out. Get him out.
Wrapping up Sports from Hell here, we're going to do an ode to Roy Smalley's Big Lebowski obsession. This segment is called That's Just Your Opinion, Man. You ready to fire, or should I go first to get what you guys think?
I can go.
Go.
I predicted the Twins will they will sign a veteran outfielder before they go to camp. I think, even though I think they're determined to have Rosario, Buxton, and Kepler in the outfield. But I think they're going to bring the veteran guy, one, for clubhouse presence, which they have none right now, other than Dozier, and two, just to keep Rosario and Kepler honest, just in case they get in the slump and they need to be sat down a little bit. Because we've seen what happens when they put Robbie Grossman in the outfield. He is by far a horrible outfielder. So I expect the veteran outfielder to be in camp.
Michael?
What?
We're going to excuse Michael.
Do you know
from
the key to a great podcast?
I'm hoping to learn over the next 10 years, but I have
Brevity.
no idea. Brevity?
Yeah, that was the joke last one. Did you forget that?
I don't listen to you during
We've been
the
on
podcast.
for almost an hour. There's been nothing.
So what? I'm supposed to come up with some sort of outlandish
Yeah,
thing?
not outlandish, just heartfelt.
I think the Wild are going to win the Central
Just say,
Division.
I am elite.
I think the Wild are going to win the Central. Is that
That's a good
enough?
one. Correct.
I
That's a
really
very good
do. I just think that the way the season's trending, the way that they look, in February, believe it or not, even though they got 9 home games, 8 in a row, that's actually not I can't see the Wild pulling off 8 straight wins. It just doesn't. That's not an easy thing to do.
Well, that's
at
good,
home.
'cause that-
But the month is built for the Wild to me gain some ground here.
It'll be good for them to get another banner up at the X next to the one lonely banner they have, next to the one Wild fan
I
banner.
agree.
that
There
they
goes
have.
that Blackhawks arrogance one more time.
I agree. To me, that one he's got it right.
Oh, absolutely.
Have you ever been to the rafters in United Center?
Yes.
Look, I mean, I
It's
could
beautiful.
stare at those Bulls banners forever. I was a Michael Jordan bandwagon guy. I love Scottie Pippen and Bill Cartwright and John Paxson and B.J. Armstrong. I can name them all. Red Clay. I love everything about it. The whole warm-ups I remember watching on WGN. And so
The
I
anthem.
go there, and I love those Bulls banners. Like, United Center is an incredible place.
It is.
They were easier to read in old Chicago Stadium when my dad and I could afford were third balcony, third balcony seats. So we were up at the top at the rafters. So it was easy to read all the banners from that vantage point.
My last opinion, I actually think the Timberwolves are going to get close to 40 victories. They're going to get hot here.
What?
Yep. They're going to get hot. They're playing better defense. They're starting to close out games. They have the talent. Rubio's finally playing well. I bet they're going to make a major run here. Question is, will anybody care
What are they
at
at?
this point? They're at like
They're
14?
13 and 26.
Oh, my God. Are
They're
you
gonna make a
kidding?
run. They're making a run.
Well, that is just your opinion, man.
I think that's the last
I mean,
word for this podcast.
just do the math
That's
of what
going to
they
be
got to
that's gonna
get
be quite
on.
a
huh?
run. They got to go 26 and 18.
Math
something like that.
Math has always bored me.
Man, what do you
That's
think?
what
There's a
we're writers.
162 game schedule?
There isn't?
Baseball. All right, I think that's a good way to end this show.
Wow.
Let me know what your mom thinks about that. For Michael Russo, Lavelle E. Neal III, this is Sports from Hell from Hell's Kitchen, downtown Minneapolis, 9th and Nicollet. Thanks to the regulars who came out. Next live podcast at Hell's Kitchen, next Wednesday, 6 o'clock, me and Michael Russo. He'll be here the next couple of Wednesdays, and Lavelle and I will be back with a special guest next Friday. Michael, are you around next Friday, or do we figure that out? We'll figure that off the air. Follow us on Twitter.
I think I am.
Follow us on Twitter. Friend us on Facebook to keep up with the schedule. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This will also be released as a podcast under Suhan Uncensored on MNSPN.com, the Minnesota Sports Podcast Network. Thanks.
So long.